About to start the show. We're waiting for
Where is it?
Dennis to come in.
What a privilege it is to see us in prep
It's
mode.
a good time to share whatever while we're waiting for everyone.
We're not waiting for anybody.
Yeah, Dennis is here. Okay.
Hi there.
There you go.
Little
All right.
audio, Dennis.
Test 1, 2, 3. How's that?
Okay, thank you.
All right, let's go.
All right. And Steve, picture your head a little bit more to the top, please. Okay. All right.
Okay.
All right, and then we're gonna
Shared.
go. Oops, let me pin Steve so that he stays.
I'm shared and shared alike.
Okay.
Hey, Dennis.
Okay.
How you doing?
Oh boy.
I like your
All right,
bookends, Frank.
Quiet, everybody. And we're gonna go in 3, 2, 1, and
Hi, Frank Radis here. This is the Gilmore Gang, and
Don't do that.
joining us in where are we?
I'm in London. Steve Gilmore here.
Oh, thank you. Also joining us is in Atlanta area, Brent Leary. Welcome, Brent.
Thank you for the warm and hearty welcome, Steve.
Do you recall?
You're welcome.
Has anybody ever seen the hearty hand clasp of W.C. Fields? We'll have to dig it up. It's great.
I can't. You know why he couldn't stand water?
Yeah, because fish
Swim in it.
Yes, they do. They swim in it.
Yeah. Joining us from the great state or Commonwealth of Massachusetts is Dennis Pombriand.
That would be me.
Which is it? Is it a Commonwealth?
Yes, there are only a few in America. There's Massachusetts and Virginia is a Commonwealth. I think a few others.
What does it mean?
Imperialism.
It's
The
just
British
the way it was
Commonwealth.
organized.
Imperialism.
And that voice is from the failing empire of the British Isles. It's Keith Tier.
Failing is complimentary. It's long failed, buried, and reconciled through comedy, Monty Python included, with its demise.
Wow.
Yes, but we have Monty Python, most of them.
Still.
You got the Beatles.
One of them.
What?
Two of them.
You know,
One.
you can hang
Two.
your hat on the Beatles. You can hang your hat on Monty Python.
What exactly?
Well, no, there's only one of them living here, and the other one's living in L.A.
Oh,
You
who's
go back and
Right?
forth, don't they?
Isn't Ringo living in America? I think he is.
I think he is L.A. You're right.
and Paul spends a lot of time here too.
And that,
Yeah, but he's got a place here. It's around the corner from where I live.
Yeah, so you're telling me you guys believe that John and George are dead?
Oh.
Yeah, I don't read QAnon.
and
That's being
one
on.
of the voices previously was Michael Markman. Welcome, Michael.
How do you do? I see blue sky here in Seattle, although we just had a day and a night of rain. Probably will have more rain, maybe even before the show is over.
I love it when you look up at the ceiling in the operating room and
Well-
say that there's blue sky there.
This is true. It's a bad illusion, isn't it?
Oh, no, it's an effective one.
No, there's obviously a skylight with angels
Skylight.
looking down on him right there.
We all follow your eyes when you do that.
So the election's over, right?
More or less.
Not quite. We're still counting down here. We got 5 million votes hand counted to go through. So
The voting is over.
Well, as
Counting.
they say, it's all over but the shouting.
Or the tweeting in this case.
Or the whining.
Well, a remarkable lack of it. I was thinking this is Trump's sulking moment.
He's awfully quiet, isn't he?
Yeah.
I think there's that. I think what he's doing is trying to put together his answer to Newsmax.
It reminds me of when one of my startups failed, and my hubris for the chances of it succeeding was so high that when it fails, it's a shock for about a week. Like, did that really happen? Did that startup not work out? The one I thought was going to be a unicorn. He's in that moment.
Well, we were all in that moment 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it
he's in that
lasted
moment
4
is not a
years.
you know, that he is quiet and sulking is not a surprise. The continued loyalty of his party is a bit of a shock to me. I thought they would be ready to drop him like a hot potato.
What part of a shock is it? I don't understand why people persist. How many of the are they ready to come over, to the light, whatever?
No, I think it's
They're
like
doing fine. They think that everything is fine. They've got the Supreme Court for 4 decades. I mean, what else is new?
they're in saving the Sunday lunch mode. You know, when you cook the Sunday lunch and the roast potatoes are burned and the guests are sitting at the table, and there is no thought of abandoning Sunday lunch. You just got to save it. So you either scrape off the burn from the potatoes or you don't serve the potatoes. They're saving the Sunday lunch, which is the Republican Party, and they can only do that by being in denial.
Yeah,
Well,
but as we
I-
talked about last week, his power, Trump's power is draining away. You can see it every day. More and more people are finally coming out. I mean, yesterday, Mike DeWine, the governor of Ohio, came out and said, yeah, Trump lost, Biden won. So it's happening. And, it's happening at a rate that's not too dissimilar from what Elizabeth Kubler-Ross talked about on Death and Dying. The 5 stages of grief.
So I'm curious, though, about all of the conversations about those people who are saying that if he does run again in 2024, he's most likely to become the nominee, which then blocks off all of the other possible Republican nominees, which says to me, why would they let that happen? Why would they shoot themselves in the foot right now? When they have 2022 to be worrying about and then 2024 to be worrying about.
Because the numbers suggest that he could win. Yeah, I mean, he's got 72 million against 77 million on an extremely high turnout with lots of passion to get rid of him, which 4 years from now will have dissipated somewhat. And so he could win.
Nah, 4 years is very long.
He has the list. He's got a tremendous list now of email addresses and phone numbers of people that he can use, A, to raise money from, and B, to threaten the rest of the Republican Party with. So as long as he holds a loyal base, they're going to be very careful about crossing him.
Or they'll
I
replace
think that list is going to be used for him to make direct contact with people to watch him on his new digital channel.
Well, not
and
just
he
to
could
watch, to subscribe. I mean, it's a list for money raising.
And they could only replace him with an anti-politician who hates the establishment and can keep the establishment hating, coalition together.
Don Jr.
Don Jr. does not really inherit the Trump brand. Remember that Trump spent decades building this brand, first as a synonymous for rich, synonymous for playboy, and then eventually moving into politics. So there is nobody else in the world that quite can duplicate the Trump brand for the people who have bought into it.
Yep.
I buy what Dennis said, though. 4 years is an awfully long time. If for example, the New York state's attorneys, they go after him, although now there's some question as to whether or not his holding on to power would somehow keep them from going after him. I'm not quite sure I understand how that works, but I've heard that. It's disconcerting.
I don't see the dynamics of that. That the biggest threat to Trump is legal, both in terms of civil suits and criminal prosecutions. He's got a lot of people coming after him.
The bigger question isn't really him.
Oh, watch
It's-
out for the bigger question. Hang on a second. Brent, you were sort of shaking your head. What was that about?
You guys started to get to it. Have we ever had a president that served from a jail cell before? I mean, as I don't know
Well-
if that'll ever happen.
James Michael Curley, former mayor of Boston in the mid 20th century, did serve as mayor from a jail cell.
And the worst thing you can ever do is create a martyr for a cause. The worst thing you can do.
Let me ask you a hypothetical, okay? Hillary Clinton won more votes than Trump. We were all crestfallen when she didn't win the presidency. Why didn't she run this year? And the answer you give to that is the same answer you're going to give to why isn't Trump running in 4 years? Time moves on.
She didn't want a bloody nose twice in a row.
Yeah.
People didn't like her.
Time moves on, but also she had really underwater favorables. She was probably, other than Trump, the most disliked candidate ever to run. So
Underwater favorable sounds like underwear.
It's good. It's kind of like it's kind of like it's good. I like that underwater.
No, I mean, you could say it was unfair. You could say it was all the result of a decades-long campaign to vilify her reputation. Whatever the reason for it, it was certainly undeserved. But people did not like Hillary Clinton.
It worked. You know, there's only been one person who served non-consecutive terms in the presidency, and his name was Grover Cleveland. And the last time somebody ran twice and got denied was Adlai Stevenson against Eisenhower. I can't see Trump, and Trump's going to be 78 too, and he's a fat, lazy 78. He's done.
Yeah, that is true. That's another threat over his next candidacy, namely death.
Yeah.
But then can I do the big question, Steve?
Can I
We should have a
stop?
sound effect for that. When you edit it, you
Yeah.
have a big sound effect. The big question.
So
key
to
race-
me,
the key
I
race
can
spring.
only,
You
I
need
can
the key
only
race-
delay it. I can only delay it. I
so
can
the
that.
the big question is the soul of the nation question, which is 4 years from now, are there 72 million or more voters in favor of whatever they were in favor of now? Or are there 77 million by then? Or are there 60 million by then? Because clearly there's something in the soul of the nation that's causing 72 million people to vote for such a distasteful candidate. One would assume that if there was a less distasteful candidate that said the same stuff, they'd still vote for that person. You
So
know,
what's
what's
the big
going
question?
on? What's going on under the surface that leads to such a close contest? You know, relatively close contest.
Oh, but also you I don't know that you're assuming this or not, but how is it possible that the same stuff would resonate then that's resonating now? I don't see it.
Well, there's a consistent driver, which is economic disadvantage. That's really at the core, and then cultural alienation from political correctness culture and cancel culture and all that stuff, which I don't see going away, because Biden's victory is going to mean that the cancel culture, political correctness will double down. Identity politics will double down. And so all the things this 72 million are acting against isn't going away. So by definition, they're not going away. And China's not going away. So the US economy is going to be challenged. So you know, the underlying causes seem deep to me.
They are deep, but remember that no national vote represents a monolith. Coalitions cobble together from a variety of interests. So some of the people who vote for Trump do so because they always vote Republican. They will vote for Republicans the next time someone runs. Some people who vote for Trump are really in this white identity fear mode, where they look at the demographics and see that the U.S. is moving towards a white minority, and they're trying to counter that. But those demographics are going to continue to rise. So there will be more Latino people. There will be more Black people. There will be more of everything but native-born whites. So that's part of the dynamic. I'm sure they will still vote for native-born whites, but there won't be as many of them each year. The Fox audience is dying off.
But to me, Michael, that my ears hear denial of, in other words, it's like, don't worry, it's not a problem.
No, I'm not saying it's not a problem. I'm saying that it's not just one thing to worry about. I'm saying it's a bunch of problems. And if you want to analyze it, you have to start taking it apart and see how the pieces fit together.
And the Democrats need to do that themselves, because they have to become the party. In a way, the Democrats should be the anti-establishment party more than the Republicans, because they want more change. And they want change in favor of normal people. So how did the Democrats get to...
I don't think anything that you're talking about is going to happen. How's that?
Yeah.
I agree, which is my problem.
So you're asking a question about something that you don't think is going to happen? Is that what you're doing?
What I'm saying is 4 years from now, I don't see a good outcome.
So let's talk about the Democrats and what...
Straight line thinking. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting.
No,
I was gonna say talk about the Democrats and sort of the vision that the Democrats have moved very far to the left and into the AOC realm. I mean, I don't understand how it is that that she can be the figurehead of something that may have changed people's minds. I don't get that. Maybe I don't know
if that happened. I think it's social media. I mean, it's like social media and there's real life. I mean, I think she's way ahead on the social media side, not as effective on the real life side. I mean,
but that's my point. Yeah, that's my point. I don't think I don't get how, was it her? Well, maybe that's sort of Trump in reverse.
Well, Biden has put together a very broad coalition, which has a number of far left components, but also a lot of moderate components. If you look at the results of Democrats who have polled, that is, have vote totals that exceed Biden's, they tend to be moderates. What AOC is doing is not universal. It works in some quarters and it works in some regions. But there are other things that work as well. Biden's gift is being able to extend this coalition so that you've got former Republicans like the Lincoln Project, and you've got Noam Chomsky all saying, let's elect Biden. I don't know how long that coalition lasts.
It doesn't have to last long.
If the Democrats
you have to
lost,
talk louder and be persistent. Please finish your thought.
I just don't like a lot of collisions. That's all. I just think it's media and social media have pushed the squad and AOC probably further than they actually really are in terms of their impact. I just think that they get a little bit more attention, maybe because they're younger and diverse and all that. But I don't know if their impact reaches as far as their social media impact does.
Yeah, but look what
couldn't you say that happened to Trump?
They're advocating saving the environment. They're advocating all good things that should be mainstream. And to answer Keith's question, why aren't the Democrats considered the radicals? Well, it's because for over about a century now, the Democrats have been introducing one radical thing after another that's become mainstream, like Social Security, like Medicare, like Medicaid, like the Affordable Care Act, and a lot of other stuff in between. The Democrats are trying to preserve that and strengthen it. And there's a hell of a lot of people out there who think that that would be a good idea. People who don't have rent money right now because the economy's shut down, for example.
Yeah, like the supposed conservative Supreme Court, which looks to be signaling that they're going to ratify the Affordable Care Act without the mandate.
Which had already had the teeth taken out of it a couple of years ago anyway, right?
Yep.
Yeah, but I mean, the Chief Justice is basically saying, why are we changing this?
Yeah.
If you guys aren't willing to change it or able to change it, then why are we gonna? It's not our job. He said that literally.
Yeah.
Which is
Okay,
great.
well,
Which
so
is great to
it is
hear, by
great.
the way.
So it runs counter to these theories about Trump TV networks and running again. And he's going to be running as much as he can run just to change the subject.
He's
So
gonna be
what?
running from law
Or
enforcement.
from jail.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to jail. I think he's going to make a deal, and look at Biden, what he's done, and his team has done. They basically won an election while we were all worried about him losing it. That's a pretty big deal, don't you think?
Yes, I think Biden's campaign and his manager, Jennifer O'Malley Dillon, haven't gotten quite as much publicity as Biden, which is what a good campaign manager should do. But she has been flawless in terms of strategy. She and the rest of the team figured out early on the way to win is to rebuild the blue wall, and that's what they focused on. Everything else.
So they focused on that, and she did her job to get him elected. But somebody dropped the ball when it came to losing those critical House seats and not getting the Senate seats that they thought they were going to get, unless they end up getting those 2 seats in Georgia. I don't see much happening in the Senate.
Who is it who thought that the Senate was going to flip?
I did.
I did.
Okay, well, let's see.
We were all kind of wrong.
Okay, yeah, so far. Who thinks John Ossoff is going to win any job in the House?
Senate.
Senate.
Well, that's where I think he's going to win.
If he wins, it's more about defeating Purdue than it is about him winning.
Yeah, I don't feel.
Or I should say it's more about defeating Mitch McConnell than it is about him winning.
Yeah, good luck with that.
I think Brent knows more about this than any of us because he's there.
Also, he
this has-
actually pays attention. Unlike
but
me.
I mean, this has less to do with Ossoff, I think, than it does to do with the ground game and the work that's being done by all of the people like Individual and by Stacey Abrams and other folks who are really trying to organize a ground game. And I have no way of knowing how successful they are.
Oh, good. All right. So here's a snap poll. Raise your hand if you think that the Democrats are going to flip the Senate. Anybody? You
I think
do.
they might.
You
I'm
think?
I'm going to put my hand up halfway only because excuse me. I'm going to be Brent for a minute. I'm afraid that
No, you're not.
I'm afraid they won't too.
The key is
I'll be
gonna,
frank with you, Brent.
Wait a minute.
You're
The
always
key-
frank.
No,
right?
the real
I am,
key will
and-
be the real key will be 2022. I doubt they're going to flip it.
God.
But will Biden get 2 years of his 4 where he's in control of everything? Maybe.
but
I
not
think-
this 2
I
years.
think- I think the pitch to the American people and to the people of Georgia is to say, look, give us a 50-50 Senate. Let us show you what we can do.
What's going on in Georgia now in terms of the media and the marketing of I mean, is it as crazy as I imagine it is?
It's just going to ramp up. We still have this 5 million hand counted thing that we have to go recount. So everybody's kind of getting into that, and then whatever they call that guy, the guy in charge of elections in the state.
Secretary of
moved-
State.
Is it the secretary? Maybe, I don't know. Well, whoever that is, he announced that they're going to have both runoffs in January instead of having the one that's supposed to take place next month. He moved that back so that both of the runoff seats are going to be done on the same day. So that's January 5th, I think. And so now it's the onslaught or the oncoming onslaught of text messages and phone calls and emails that we're already starting to get about, choosing your sides, choosing your battle. And most of this stuff is really going to start coming from out of the country, out of the state. A lot of this is not even about what's going on in the state. It's about control of the Senate from a national perspective. I don't know how that's going to play to all the, the locals here. You need to have some talk about why it's important from your perspective as a citizen of Georgia, not just about, well, if you vote for this, that means Mitch McConnell won't, they got to start talking to the local folks.
If you
more,
if you
right
listen
now
to
it's
what-
all
if you-
national.
if you listen to what Ossoff and Warnock are saying, that's exactly what they're saying. They are not campaigning on let's ditch Mitch. All the out-of-state fundraising is ditch Mitch, but the in-state messaging is about this is what it means to you.
Right.
Isn't that what the lady that ran against Mitch did? Although it was Mitch, I suppose if it had been somebody else, it wouldn't have been as big a deal. But isn't that what she did? She said exactly that.
And she lost by 5 points.
Yeah.
You lost by how much?
I think it
Oh,
was a
more.
5-point margin for McConnell.
It was
ultimately.
comfortable, yeah.
I thought he was up by even more than that at one point, but maybe that worked. But the other thing too is the Republicans are running on fear of Trump saying something or fear of Trump not saying something. In other words, they either activate the Trump army or don't do anything to piss off the Trump army, or the Trump, I should say, because I don't think they're going to get the Trump vote anyway, because he doesn't care anymore. He's not on the ballot. He doesn't care. He knows he's not going to be coming back to be president. So unless they were really loyal to him for like a long period of time, I don't see him lifting a finger to get them over the top.
I hope you're right. I mean, it's the 2018 dynamic. He wasn't on the ballot, so the Democrats could run on issues. He won't be on the ballot in January.
That's the reason why the Democrats lost some of those seats in the House, because Trump wasn't on the ballot in 2018. So he wasn't really going all out. But 2020, he went all out, and some of those folks, they just got caught in the wash, so to speak.
Well, also with his name at the top of the ballot under the Republican banner, checked down all the way down to the bottom of the list, and everybody that's a Republican gets voted in. He's not on the ballot. People actually have to make a choice,
Right.
unless the choice is strictly Republican or strictly Democrat.
And typically runoffs don't get quite the participation that a presidential election will get. So the dynamic changes there as well.
Okay, so which one's going to win of the two? Ossoff, I say no. The other guy, definitely.
Yeah,
Warnock.
the other guy, not Ossoff. It's going to split, I think, at least from what I can see. Isn't that Kelly Loeffler or Loeffler or whatever her name is? Isn't she a QAnon candidate?
No, she's not one of those. But she might be even. Well, I was going to say worse, but there's really nothing worse than that. No, she's one of those that benefited off of being rich and made some sell-offs based on some of the information that was coming out about the pandemic at the particular time. So did Purdue, though. I mean, it's like, these guys aren't the greatest candidates for them to be running right now. Let's put it like that.
So did apparently the owner of Pfizer. Didn't he just sell 5 million shares of Pfizer just before the public announcement?
Really?
Yeah, I read that today somewhere.
No,
I don't know if that's.
Frank, he sold them quite a few months ago in March.
Oh, It didn't sound like that in the story I was reading. I
Yeah,
don't know
no,
who wrote it then. I'm gonna have to go back and look at that.
And when he sold them, the price was higher than it is now after the announcement.
Maybe he bought. Did he buy?
Don't know. No, he definitely sold in March quite a lot, about 80% of his options.
Think he knew something?
Not then, because how could he? It's too.
I don't know. Maybe, yeah. Who knows? Huh?
In March, everything was priced in. But now, if he went out and bought stock just before the announcement, that might be something worth looking into.
Yeah, that would be insider dealing. He wouldn't be allowed to do that.
Right,
Unless it was in an open period, then he could.
right.
One thing
Okay,
about
then.
Ossoff,
Has anybody
Ossoff-
seen?
I was going to say Ossoff underperformed Biden in Georgia. I think Biden is up right now 14,100 votes, and Ossoff was down 90,000 to Purdue. So he would have to overperform what he did
Give it to me, please.
without the presidential, top end, and that could be tough for him.
Is the turnout for a Senate seat anywhere close to the general election turnout?
No.
So
So
it
that's-
is,
CNN projects Biden wins Georgia.
Could have told you that.
No.
Yeah,
Yeah. So they just called it?
Yep.
I gave him the okay sign. I don't know why they waited so long. I don't know.
did anyone read the interview with AOC about 2 weeks ago or just after the election? It was in the Times.
I did, yes.
Okay, so she was talking about the fact that Democrats have not really embraced internet marketing for their candidates, and that the people who lost it wasn't a question of their policy position so much as they just didn't know how to go out and knock on the right electronic doors.
Yes, it was a media buying story that she had. She said, if you aren't spending at least $200,000 on Facebook, you don't understand the game anymore.
Right. So I look at that and I think, well, it's not too late to do something a little bit different in the Georgia runoff. And you've got Stacey Abrams with a big, good, recently vetted list of people to contact and bring to the polls. So that gives me cause for optimism.
I just feel like it's a trap. It's a Republican trap. They're going to give him one, but not both.
Who's this they? Which they are you talking about?
McConnell.
How does McConnell control the vote?
I don't know how he does it, actually. If I knew that.
No.
The people
Trump.
who control that
Trump
vote.
is the one that controls that vote. And I just don't think he cares.
I don't think, yeah, I agree with that. I don't think Trump has, his power is diminishing by the minute at this point.
That's true. Plus, you've also got Joe Biden, who promises to build a cabinet that reflects the American people and indicated that there would be some Republicans in the cabinet. It'd be very easy to go out and poach 1 or 2 senators for the cabinet and have special elections in those states to replace them.
That's fascinating, particularly if they're in state, Republican governor hands. That's a great strategy. However, I don't think that McConnell will allow it.
In Democratic governor hands, but yes.
Period.
I don't think there are any available senators in Democratic governor hands.
Kentucky has a Democratic governor.
Say that again?
Yeah.
Kentucky has a Democratic governor.
Who is the governor of Minnesota? Is he she
He's
or
a Democrat.
It's a
Democrat.
Democrat.
So that's how they can leak the idea that what's her name, the
Amy
senator.
Klobuchar.
Yeah, that she's going to be Secretary of Defense, I think, something like that.
It's already been
possibly
leaked,
AG.
really?
Attorney General, that's right.
Yeah.
The only way that they can do that is if they can appoint somebody who's a Democrat.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
then again, if you are down a couple of seats in the Senate, poaching a couple of Democratic senators for cabinet positions isn't going to matter too much. I mean, you have to make a strategic decision. Are you going to run a robust executive branch, or are you going to try to have a robust give and take in the Senate? If it looks like you're not going to have a robust give and take in the Senate, then you put it into mothballs. You take your best players and you put them into cabinet.
Right. I think that's what's going to happen. So I think that, the theory that somehow we're going to be able to convince McConnell to allow cherry picking of Republican senators as cabinet members, I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
maybe.
All right. So I have one more question. The only thing that I think is up for grabs right now is the so-called issue of the Trump TV network. And here's why I think it is somewhat interesting. There's an opportunity for Trump or someone like him to move from a broadcast model to a streaming model. In other words, he can, or his, fans can initiate a small network that has a lot of reach and a lot of, what do they call it, unpaid media behind him.
Owned media.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. So,
Well, that's good for Trump. He hates paying for things.
or
No, I think you're right, Steve. I think that you're absolutely right. I definitely don't think it's going to be a cable channel, or it's not going to be a terrestrial channel. It's not going to be a satellite channel, if there's ever any satellite left. And he couldn't get it up and running fast enough if it was anything other than a digital channel. And if all of this money that's going into this PAC under $8,000 is money that he then is able to control, it could be money that can help seed something like that. And it doesn't cost a whole lot of money to get something like that started. And you can bet he's going to have plenty of people who are still close enough to him that want to have they want to be attached to his coattails. Just on the off, hey, look, he's going to still have some power in the Republican Party. People want to be a part of that. And he needs something to make money. He has already publicly said, I need to go and make some money. But B, he also is the kind of person that wants to make sure he's still got a public face, and that he's still out there trying to be relevant. And I guess, because I was going to ask earlier, what do we think he's in there doing, not saying anything? I think he's in there preparing something like this.
Well,
yeah, before
the digital channel makes sense for a couple of reasons beyond what Frank gave us. It also has many more opportunities for monetization compared to a TV channel. Click here and buy this. Click here and buy that. The ability to get direct subscriptions and not having to negotiate with the cable operators for carriage, and the ability to offer merchandise or any other kind of add-on is incredible.
it's all
He
about
has special event for $4.95 a month, and he gets any large sum part of that 70 million people that voted for him, and there's a business model right there. Aside from selling the hats and the T-shirts and the gloves and
Absolutely, subscription plus, and if they do,
and then and obviously. And once you've got those kinds of numbers, you can monetize it without even trying to sell a product that is even remotely attached to your cause.
But,
It's just automatic.
And one more thing, one more thing. If he can build a social network aspect to it, he can sell advertising, a huge amount of advertising, monetizing it the same way Facebook is monetized.
Well, I think there are two reasons why that won't happen. Number one, take a look at what happened to The Apprentice.
It died?
Yeah. And how come did it die? Because the advertising went away.
Well, because the audience.
Because the
went.
ratings went away. Yeah, the audience.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but he
advertising
could,
follows
Okay.
he could
So
sell
that-
all of his commercials to that guy who makes the pillow and
Yeah, Popeil, Ron Popeil.
Ron
That
Pope. Is he
could-
still
No.
alive? I wonder
I
if
have
he's
no
still.
idea.
But there's a thing. Remember those old 800 number La Zamfir type
Yeah.
commercials? Those are per inquiries. So imagine. They still exist. There's still, you can buy that paste that fills a hole and turns into rubber right now by dialing an 800 number, and that's a per inquiry. Then the channel gets a percentage of anything that's purchased with that 800 number.
Okay.
And I can tell you, I don't know if that stuff works, but every time I've ever bought anything on a PI, it never worked.
Actually, if
so-
you look at the numbers, the number of simultaneous viewers worldwide on CNN varies from a low of 50,000 to a high under 1 million simultaneous viewers.
But
But-
they
and
it's
they-
their
and they make-
subscriptions though. With
Wait,
No,
I want
wait.
to hear what Keith is saying. Finish
So
it.
wait, so their core revenue is about 3 billion a year, of which about half comes from the cable companies paying subscriptions to them, and the other half comes from advertising.
yeah.
So with 1 million simultaneous viewers, you have roughly 3 billion in revenue if you're carried on the cable networks or the over the top like YouTube TV and Sling and so on. So, that's a low bar. I would say that's a very low bar. I did the analysis on what it would cost to set up a competing network to CNN using only over the top. And $20 million would take a very long way to having a competing offering.
Okay, and that was the
Yeah.
second thing that I was going to say that is why none of this is going to happen, and what we're talking about is going to happen, which is, Fox can do this too. They're not just sitting there, helpless.
But you're right, Steve. But my guess is Fox is probably already planning and has been for a long time to do it anyway. I mean, look, is a good example of that is Discovery, which has 15 or 20 different channels. They are just now starting to get into the streaming world, but they've been thinking about it for a long time. It's an obvious thing to do. Everyone's going to end up doing it. He has the advantage, however, of having reach and frequency to his loyal audience, which gives him an opportunity to start this digital channel already with an audience. I mean, look, as Keith says, the real secret, the secret to that nobody wanted to talk about in the cable world was that the ratings were never that good. I mean, a television show, even a hit show on a cable channel would get canceled on a regular television network because the ratings would be so bad. 3 million, 4 million, that's a big number on a cable network. 3 or 4 million is like, this show's not going to make it past 3 episodes of season 1.
Wow.
But it doesn't matter on cable, or it didn't matter. Those numbers on cable are going down. They're
But
going
Frank,
down all the time.
Frank, the reason it works, a good friend of mine is Ed Bennett, who used to be MTV's CEO for a while. And before that, he was Prodigy's CEO.
Mhm.
And Ed, when he came to MTV, was behind the move from per channel advertising to across all cable network advertising. So you can go and buy once and put it on lots and lots of different cable channels. So the aggregate audience of all cable is what they buy. And then they can target demographics and geographies and so on and so forth.
Well,
That's
yes.
why it works. But therefore you have to be part of that. If you're going to launch a new channel and you want advertising, you have to be buyable in that bundle. Otherwise, you got to build up all your own value chain. And that's impossible.
So even if you go and you buy your advertising for your product at all the cable channel head ends, you're going to buy what the cable channel head end says they have as their aggregate of total number of possible viewers. The thing about, and that's the dirty little secret of cable. Just because there are 100 million possible viewers, never does anyone get 100 million viewers.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen. However, from a sales perspective, you are essentially buying 100 million viewers, which is a dirty little secret.
Yep. Yep.
Okay,
whole
so
thing
Brent's, you're running out of time here, right?
Yes.
Okay, so
Bastard.
Connect the dots here, or let me connect the dots. Ossoff will not win. The president will be successful. The incoming president will be successful at neutralizing the partisan rancor, simply because all the air is going to be let out of the Trump balloon. The TV network idea that everybody thinks is what's going to happen with Trump, I don't think is going to happen because the forces that are in play in terms of network consolidation, mergers, acquisitions, and this move to streaming is going to overwhelm. It's like what's his name at Bloomberg at the Democratic Convention saying, you know, this guy's not rich. Okay, well, that was a good summary. Your laugh was a good summary.
Yeah.
You know,
I
anything to
know
add?
what
was
I was supposed
good,
to do
Steve.
with
Hey, Brent, Steve gave you a good answer there, didn't he?
yes, I couldn't have said it any differently.
There you go.
Or at all. 'Cause
or
that
definitely
gives
at
me
all.
airtime, yeah. Okay, so your thoughts about
Another
this?
question.
I mean, you're sitting here on top of a CRM Playas network, which is expanding every week in terms of live streaming. This is the game that you're playing. What do you think is going to happen to Trump? Yes or no?
You asked me what do I think is going to happen to Trump? Yes or no?
Yeah, in terms of TV.
Yes. It's like, okay.
No.
In terms of TV,
Yeah,
Um,
it's a TV.
you know
What do you
what?
think?
I think he's going to look for a way that he could do the least amount of work and effort, but get the maximum credit, just like he does everything else. He's the best marketer and brand, what do they call it? Self-brand promotioner there is. He doesn't want to do any work whatsoever. He just wants to be able to have somebody else do all the work, put his name on it, and then take all the credit. That's whatever that model works. That's where he's going with this.
And that's what you're afraid that's what's going to happen, or you think that's what's going to happen?
No, that's what I absolutely believe is going to happen. He's going to be like, look, I don't want to do any work. I just want to take credit. I want you to build the audience for me. I want you to put me in front of the audience, and I'll take care of the rest. I don't want to do any work. I want to check, and I don't want to do any work. And I want to get all the credit if we get big audiences. That's all he wanted to do as president. He just wanted to win the election. He wanted to win 2016 so he could talk about it for the rest of his life. And now that he lost 2020, he can't talk about 2016 for the rest of his life anymore. So now he's got to figure out something else to do.
You make me think about something that happened a very long time ago in my career, where we had a TV show on ABC that was an interview program, and the interviewer never ever read any of the work that we did to prepare him or her for the interview that he was going to do, and consequently the interviews were horrible all the time. I think that based on not just what you said, but also from just experience, I don't think that there's going to be a role for him as a host or an interviewer of a program, just because of the fact that you really can't do that without doing the work. And although I do think that a lot of what he says is because he's in his bubble and somebody is telling him and he's going out and repeating it like a parrot. But you can't do that as an interviewer either. You need to listen and know how to connect the dots and follow a thought process. So I don't think that's a role that he's going to be able to play. So one of the other things that people have been talking about is that he gets a job, a very highly paid job as a consultant or somebody who joins Fox as to be on the panels, and that he's the guy that they call all the time. My problem with that is that he actually has to get up and go in. And I don't know that he would do that.
Nobody has to go in anymore. You know that. Everybody works from home.
Well, I think even that he has to get up and go over there to do it. I
think there's a related question. Let me throw this back to vaudeville. In the days of vaudeville, you could have a 12-minute.
Hold the thought. Brent, I know you have to go. So thank you so much. And we'll see you again next time.
Have a good rest of the show, fellas. And of course, you're in the very capable hands of the person who really runs the show, Tina. So, guys later.
Hey, Brent.
Fact.
Chow mein.
Okay, go ahead, Michael.
In the days of vaudeville, early in the 20th century, you could have an 8 or a 12-minute act and take it by train or bus from town to town and do it again and again, and you didn't need any new material. When the vaudeville people got to radio and television, they couldn't do the same act every night. They had to hire writers. They needed material. You have to be new and different every time you show up. I just wonder how many minutes Trump has to hold an audience. How long will he last on TV with nothing to talk about?
Well,
I think
that's
a good point.
Ask the question, what would you do if you were him? And assume some element of rationality, which is hard, I know. But if you just got 72 million votes and lost an election, who's looking at you is everybody who thinks 72 million is a big number and wants to monetize that audience. So if you're him, I don't know, if it was me, I wouldn't be that deflated. I'd be thinking, thank God I don't have to do that job anymore. Now I've got this fantastic brand with 72 million people who look to my every word. How am I going to, leverage that? It would be an exciting moment. It wouldn't be a depressing moment.
Well, there was a lot of talk about that, and Michael Cohen still says the same thing now, that the first campaign, the 2016 campaign, was not to win, but to build a brand. So he's done that. He's right now, he is where he would have been if his expectations were met in 2016 and he lost the election.
Dennis.
He's in a worse place right now. The scenario you're describing is really the scenario of a two-term president who leaves office and a rush of goodwill ushers him out the door. Donald Trump has been a terrible president, and he's now proved to be America's crazy uncle. His popularity is declining. If he goes off and does some of what you're talking about in the media, he's going to pigeonhole himself. He's going to be a niche player as a crazy uncle. He's never going to run for president again, and you may not agree with me, but his following is going to shrink. It's especially going to shrink a year or two from now when we've been through a successful vaccination course. There's an infrastructure plan going. People are working. People are going to forget real quickly about Trump, but they will remember the bad old days.
Dennis, it can shrink and still be massive. It's massive. That is a massive audience, and
your theory of that being massive is based on the idea that there were 20 whatever million people voting for him. They didn't vote for him. They voted for the Republican Party.
Well, they voted for the Republican
denial.
Party.
Honestly, I believe
it's just a fact.
No, you're in denial. It is not a fact.
It's totally a fact.
Where does that fact come from? Where does that fact come from?
Personality. It is.
No. Honestly, I feel sorry for you. You're not seeing the wood for the trees.
I just agreed with you. How can you feel sorry for me?
No, he's talking about me. He feels sorry for me.
Yeah, I was talking about Steve. I would never feel sorry for you, Dennis. You're one of my favorite people and a champion intellect. But that said,
Back at you, buddy.
Sounds
Back
like-
at you.
God.
Tell the host what an asshole he is, and then keep talking. Go ahead.
no, but all I'm saying is, I don't know why I'm the only one that why am I the only one that thinks that the 72 million people, even if 20 million voted for the Republican Party, it doesn't really matter. 72 million people voted despite the fact that he was leading it. And if you are a commercially minded person, you're going to leverage that somehow. Yeah, I mean, it's probably the best platform he's ever had in his life.
Yeah, that's not saying much.
It's certainly many more than he had on The Apprentice at any time, even when he thought that it was number one, which it actually never was.
And he's going to try and influence what people think. He's going to be sniping at Biden and Kamala Harris. He's going to be picking fights every time he wants to. He's going to become the MSNBC of the next 4 years. Whether it's
I think he wants, but I think he wants to become Rush Limbaugh.
Yeah, well, MSNBC was sniping.
At it.
I think Trump becomes Douglas MacArthur in retirement.
I don't know if he'll do a channel, by the way. When I say he'll become the MSNBC, I don't mean he'll do a channel. I don't know what he'll do, but he'll do something. He's not going to do nothing.
Douglas MacArthur got fired by Harry Truman for rank insubordination, and he faded away. And
Yeah.
And I see the same kind of thing happening to Trump.
Totally right.
Trump is
Yeah.
tarnished.
Yeah, this is a mirage.
That's a very good.
It is raised something we haven't considered very much in this discussion when he mentioned the vaccine. I mean, we have a raging epidemic going on, and the numbers are spiking. If you look at the curve, it's a hockey stick right now. By the time Trump leaves office, there will be probably 400,000 dead, maybe more. That's going to be a big part of his reputation after this.
No, but then he'll jump back to the sniping side. And just as he claimed credit for the Obama economy, he's going to blame Biden for whatever COVID is, in the first quarter of 20one.
People are
and
sick
Some
of
are going to run after
guy.
the
They
fourth quarter.
they can't stand the
As
sound
Dennis
of his
said,
voice.
there's going to be a vaccine regime. The virus will come under control, and it will be not Trump's doing that it happened.
But
He's giving us very good information about what it's going to sound like by not saying anything for a week.
Yeah. All I'm saying is
He's going to bottle that, and he's not going to say anything for the next 4 or however long he lives, years.
Good.
I just don't.
And everybody's going to be happy about that. And
Not hearing him, you mean?
whether that's a plus for him as a business model or not, I don't care.
I think you're all too nice.
As long as
You're all too nice. You're
just-
not devious. You're not devious people. You've got to become a devious person and ask the question, what would I do, to be able to think what he's going to do? And I have a bit of devious about
you
me.
have to. I don't care what he's going to do. I just, as
No,
soon
you
as
will.
he's out of office, the next 70 days, I'm worried about it. But
Keith,
after
yes.
that, who cares?
Keith, you're not devious enough. You can't possibly put yourself into Trump's shoes.
True.
You have too many scruples.
True. Yeah. True.
So you,
But yeah, I'm more devious than Dennis or Steve or Frank or Michael. You're all very honest, straightforward people. I've done startups and had to maneuver, had to be streetwise and blah, 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 blah. I've got a bit of deviousness, and trust me.
Hey, I worked in network television, Keith.
Yeah, you do.
Let's
Yeah.
not. So
But you were one of the nice guys, Frank.
we're
yeah, that's
talking
why I didn't last. That's why I only lasted for 40 years.
We're talking
Well,
about
look.
guys. They make their own rules.
Who does?
Listen,
Sociopath.
didn't
I
he try
can't-
to take credit for Project Warp Speed having created the situation that Pfizer made the vaccine, and then Pfizer came back and said, no, we took no money from Project Warp Speed. We're not involved that way. I found that to be an interesting thing that kind of flew over a lot of people's heads and didn't get a lot of conversation. It seemed to me that was one that somebody should have put on the brakes and gone, what?
What about this guy Langford? Anybody have thoughts about that, Michael?
What about him?
Well, he basically said these guys
He
need
said
to
if-
have
if he
they
doesn't
need
get
to have
the briefing-
briefings, and if they don't
Right.
have them by today, Friday,
Right?
then I'm going to do something about it.
Well,
Did he
that's-
do anything?
That's a
What-
new sound. That's a new sound from a Republican or even a Democrat for that.
It is a new sound. It's interesting that he issued a clarification because people were pushing him. Are you saying that Biden is now the president-elect? He said, no, I'm just saying we ought to give him the briefings because we don't know who the president will be. So
But now, doesn't Harris get the briefings, by the way? Doesn't Harris get the briefings?
Sure.
She
Yeah.
doesn't-
She's on the
She can't
intelligence
share them,
committee.
but
No.
she gets them.
No, she's on the intelligence.
I don't think that's the case. She gets a lot of top secret information, but I don't think she gets the president daily brief. And that's what they're talking about. There is a
The PDB. I thought that I had heard somewhere that she did get the PDB, but
I believe she's cleared
even so that
Or
she
the
can't
level
share
of
it.
information that's on it. Right, of course. But I'm trying to tease out something different here, which is the sound of a authentic or semi-authentic Republican voice. That's an interesting development.
It is.
We're seeing it at the margins. We're seeing it at the margins. A few of them are coming forward.
Well, if you were in that part of the Republican Party that the Liberty Project personified, and you were asking yourself, what should you do for the next 4 years? I think you would have to plan how to remove the Trumpism from the party and win it back. And you need a strategy to do that. And I think you're right that there are signals, but I don't see a plan coming from a credible alternative yet.
What happened to Mitt Romney in all of this?
He's still there. He's still Mitt Romney. I still wouldn't.
He's still saying what he says, and he's not being listened to by his party.
But one more time, the Langford strategy is basically to say, we've got the Supreme Court, mic drop.
Right.
Interesting strategy. Just let the clock run out on Trump, and then get back to work.
Well, I read something yesterday. The only thing I've read that really worried me was that Trump's whole strategy is to let the clock run out so that by December is it the 14th or the 5th? I've forgotten.
14th.
14th, when the Electoral College meets, that there is no definitive winner in a certain number of states, and that he could somehow hoodwink those state voting members to vote for him. The article pointed out that was tried before once by Democrats and has never worked, but it was a credible kind of theory about what his strategy might be.
Well, there are two levels of it. One is, can he get Republican state legislatures to put forward another slate of electors? And the other is, can he subvert some of the electors and entice them over to switch their votes? And I don't think
that's been tried before, hasn't it, Dennis? Hasn't that been tried before and failed?
Well, there was some effort to do that last time in 2016. It didn't amount to anything.
Let's think.
Since then, there's been a Supreme Court case about what's known as faithless electors, and the Supreme Court, I think within the last year, verified that if you are elected a Republican elector, you have to vote for the Republican candidate, and vice versa for Democrats. But that still doesn't answer the question about shenanigans going in and subverting the process and substituting a different slate of electors. But I think, God, that would be really, really coup d'etat material.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is why it's not going to happen.
No, I think that's definitely not going to happen.
Ah,
But
good.
do any of you have
Steve wasn't confident.
any of you have any
I'm
insight
just looking for
what's going
some
on?
degree of sanity. Go ahead, please, Mike.
Do any of you have any insights into what's going on in the Pentagon with Trump inserting people at the top?
Isn't that interesting? I don't have a clue.
Yeah, I mean, it's potentially
scary.
troubling, but just the use of the word troubling is troubling, in my opinion.
Well, and then there's the rumor that he's gonna get rid of the CIA, the lady that runs the CIA. So I mean, it seems like there's this Haspel who has really kind of run under the radar. It sounds to me like it's dismantling on his way out of the
CIA director is that is the job description, running under the radar.
well, more so than anyone else in the recent past. And I think that that says that there's a concerted effort to dismantle the infrastructure of our security agencies, which is something he has said for a long time that he didn't trust and or respect. Remember that moment in front of the wall in the CIA? I mean, that was just a pitiful moment.
I know, but if he hasn't done it in 4 years, he's not going to get it done in the last 8 weeks.
Yeah, the thing to keep in mind here is that he's messing with the civilian leadership of these organizations, and especially in the Pentagon. There are a lot of people who took an oath to the Constitution who will follow civilian leadership up to the point where a civilian leader gives them an illegal order, and they'll be happy to deny that order.
Is that too much good vibes for you, Keith?
Well, I'm definitely not binary about good and black and white, evil, good. I'm so pleased that Biden has won. I think he'll take office. I think Trump will move to plan B, whatever that is, post President Trump. And I think Biden will have a hard time getting stuff done. He'll kind of have to do what Obama did, which is self-censor in a way what can get done versus what he'd like to get done. So I think the next 4 years will be way nicer than the last 4, but there'll be challenges. And I think 4 years from now, Biden is going to, or whoever stands, if it isn't him, will need a very enthusiastic, massive turnout to beat whoever the Republican candidate is.
Well, that's until, who's it going to be? Pompeo? You think there's going to be a big turnout for that guy?
Ted Cruz. Marco
Cruz, Tom Cotton, none of them sound to me.
It could be anyone. We don't know. I mean, it could be someone we don't even know. Right
none of them come in with the kind of brand that Trump came in with. And they have no way of getting it.
Let's just hope it isn't another Trump.
Nicole Wallace.
Oh, I love her.
I'd vote for her.
I would too.
Well, that's if the Republican Party is won back during the next 4 years, and that would be an awesome choice. She's fantastic.
Yeah. Right. Well, there you go.
Yeah. Let's start that rumor right here and right now.
Bingo. All right. So let's quickly explore anything else other than this 70-day madness. anything else? I think Facebook is circling the drain in terms of its ethical credibility.
I got one.
Does
I
that
think,
matter?
I think Jack Dorsey is doing a great job of, just basically doing what he feels like and keeping two companies relatively strong in the midst of trying to exit this pandemic. I think that is a big story.
Yeah.
Anything else going on
TikTok.
what about TikTok? What happened?
Nothing.
Looks like nothing. That's the story. That the administration basically shut down its worrying about TikTok. TikTok complained, "Hey, we haven't heard from these guys in a couple of weeks. Can we just move on?" And it appears that they're just going to move on.
Okay, what about the new Macs?
Yes. What about them?
I think the M1 chip is surprisingly advanced. We all knew they were going to do an ARM-based chip, but what they actually announced was an 8-core plus another 8 cores doing graphics, plus more cores doing machine learning, plus more cores doing other stuff with memory on the chip as well, 16 gig, up to 16 gig of memory. So they basically built a system on a chip, which means that all of the normal speed bumps when components talk to each other across a motherboard have gone. And so they've got something that cost them $75 to manufacture that they were previously paying Intel hundreds of dollars for. They basically control their own future with massively increased gross margins on each laptop or Mac. And it outperforms the current state of the art in both graphics and compute power on Intel chips. So
It's like 3x the performance at
Speed.
what, 30% of the heat.
Yeah. Well, there's no fan in the
fan.
MacBook Air doesn't have a fan. The MacBook Pro 13-inch does have a fan, but that's because they clock speeding it at a higher speed.
Universal apps across tablets, phones, and computers.
Actually, they just released Final Cut Pro and Logic Pro as universals this morning already. Affinity, which is like a Photoshop, Illustrator, and Quark Express competitor, just released today their apps. Apple has put new wind in its sails, and it's going to go to 2 trillion. Don't buy the stock based on my advice, but it's going nowhere but up.
So is this an effort to try and make the ecosystem be the same on the mobile devices as on the non-mobile devices?
That's a byproduct. The byproduct is you can actually run, as long as the developer allows it, it's a tick box for the developer. You can now run any iPad app on your laptop.
There's just a few little tweaks to deal with the I/O, that you have a mouse instead of a finger. Yeah. But yes,
they deal with that with just a tick. If you tick the box, they do it all for you in Xcode.
When they bring back the finger in the MacBook Air, get mic drop.
Well, they
did that a number of times tonight.
They don't necessarily have to do that because that's the iPad.
The big loser is the Microsoft Surface, which just announced new versions a couple of months ago. And these new Macs are cheaper and 5 times faster.
Well, I've saved a lot of time by not reading anything about the Surface for 5 years. So I'm going to stay with
hi
it.
to Uncle Frank.
Oh, thank you for coming back. Look at that.
Here we go.
Okay. So I guess we've had our tech moment here. That was exciting.
It's good.
Okay. Around the horn.
Actually, there is there wasn't.
one more thing. I think there's one more thing to say about this this switch. It is a massive challenge to switch out a processor in a platform that's already in existence, and do it as seamlessly as Apple has, so that all of the old x86 software will run on the new Macs. They'll run, and they will run with no noticeable speed degradation. I mean, the emulator, because there are so many more cores to work with, the emulator gives you better performance on your old software, and the new software is just coming to market.
So in my editorial of my newsletter this week, I compared the world saying goodbye to Trump to the world saying goodbye to Intel. And I said that the future will be smooth on the Apple Macs, and it probably will be in the White House too.
See, this is why that sounds really, really good. So this is the jeopardy that you put yourself in, is by being so wrong about Trump that people will doubt what you just said about everything else, which I think is accurate.
No, I'm not.
It's just a matter of opportunity cost.
I'm always wrong. A good friend of mine once said, Keith will be always wrong because he's always prepared to tell you what his current point of view is, and therefore he's going to be wrong a lot. So I'm okay being wrong.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to be wrong this time. I did read something in the last couple of days that that tech would have a smoother ride through this White House. Do we feel that's true?
Opposite.
Dennis says no,
I
because
read the opposite.
Yeah, I'm with Dennis. It's going to
What you
be
mean by tech?
big tech.
If you mean science, yes, it'll have a smoother ride. If you mean large tech companies, they will be challenged.
Yeah, that's what I meant. I think so. I think you're right. I think science. That's why I questioned it when I read it. But it was an interesting story. It came. I think it was the New York Times just about 3 days ago.
Well, that's my newsletter. I make the point that progress and innovation and big tech you can't really separate them as themes. And if you're against big tech, you need to have a narrative about how you're for progress and what you mean by progress and innovation, because it's pretty hard to be for progress and innovation and be against big tech.
I think it's a shell game. I think that, trying to attack the Democrats for being anti-big tech is, it's the last war, and it doesn't really reflect. I mean, once the guy who's in charge of the FCC is taken out to pasture, what happens then? Those are the interesting questions about about the government and tech.
I think that's the bright spot, Steve, which is Section 230 will not be the focus, which has been the focus under Trump for the last few weeks anyway. Antitrust will be the focus. And the definition of what is a monopoly, whether these people are monopolies and whether they're abusing their power, that's going to be the key narrative. And then if they are monopolies, even though they don't monopolize any market, who else is a monopoly? Are you a monopoly if you're big? Which is the implication. So is Oracle a monopoly? Is Salesforce a monopoly? Because it's big and it has market power and it acquires its competitors. The answer should be no. But unfortunately, right now, the mood is the answer should be yes.
I think if you took Facebook out of the mix, everything would change. There's so much resentment about Facebook that it colors and poisons the whole conversation.
Yep, I think that's true. And Facebook has disappointed me massively, actually, because there was a time when Zuckerberg, I thought, was holding a line based on a hands-off approach, and he's completely abandoned that recently. The Democrats were probably okay with it, and Trump was criticizing him because it was mainly affecting Trump. But the truth is, he changed the rules about what Facebook is, and he's turned Facebook into a publisher from being a platform through his actions. And once it's a publisher, it becomes fair game for everything. I don't see there's a win there for them.
I think you're right. I think he did it for profits, and he's just doing it as long as he thinks he can get away with it. But at some point, because he is a publisher, he's gonna have to play by different rules.
Okay, Frank Radis, last thoughts?
Reinstate the fairness doctrine.
Yeah.
Why?
Why
Then
not?
then we would be listening to what? The Democrats have 7 days of silence just to match Trump?
I guess that's one way to look at it. I still say reinstate the fairness doctrine. Thank you very much. Drop the mic. to, you know, to
What are those
steal one
things-
from you.
What are those Emmys for?
One's for Nightline, and the other one is for a show that we did called The Crisis Game, which is a show that we did where we had Edwin Muskie play the part of the president, and a large panel of people sitting around in a conference room trying to figure out how to stop a terrorist attack on a oil tanker that was parked in New York Harbor. And there was a 24-hour period that they had to figure out how that they could get that to happen. And there were a lot of really smart people in that room, people from CSIS, Georgetown, and people from the different think tanks, and there were, you know, actors who played parts out in the world. It was a very complicated program, and it was all done in real time in 24 hours. It's something that one of the producers at Nightline and did at Georgetown CSIS, and they did it all the time. The government still does it all the time. They do wargaming. The only problem with this particular war game was that it didn't solve the problem. Then the ship blew up. However, it was a really good show, and we won that Emmy right there.
Big explosion Emmy.
Big explosion. It was nuclear in size.
Okay.
Yeah.
Michael Markman.
Hi, I got nothing.
Keith here.
Watch The Undoing. It's really good.
What's that?
Which one's that?
It's the one with Hugh Grant and the Australian actress
Nicole Kidman.
Nicole Kidman.
Yeah, I heard about that.
It's week by week, so you can't binge
Only
watch
2 more
it.
episodes, by the way.
Say it again.
There's only 2 more episodes.
Right, but it's really good.
Limited series, they call it,
Yeah.
which I think is a misnomer. Dennis Pombriand.
If the Dems don't carry the Senate, I think the Biden administration should invert the 4-year trajectory and aim at the midterms by proposing a lot of legislation that the Republicans shoot down, and keeping a running tally of it, and beating Republicans over the head and shoulders with it in 2022. In which case they would maybe get a Democratic Senate by then. And the last 2 years of the Biden administration could be one that are very progressive years, which would set up Kamala Harris to run for president.
Wow.
That's the plan.
Wow.
All right. Some real value here. I want to thank
Cool.
our producer and director, Tina Chase Gilmore.
Thank you, Steve. Good job, everyone.
Yeah, this was, I think we survived the week of silence, and now we'll stand ready for the next week of silence. Actually, we're recording this on whatever this is, Friday, and Trump is speaking at 1 o'clock Pacific.
4 Eastern.
Yeah, 4 Eastern, in other words, half an hour. So you can switch right over. And I want to thank Frank Radis. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Michael Markman.
Thank you. Enjoyed your company, all of you.
Keith Tier.
I enjoyed keeping you on your seats.
What?
Exactly. I don't know. I don't know what it means either.
But you're okay with that, right?
I'm okay with that.
All right. Dennis Pombriant,
I enjoyed this. Thank you so much for having me.
our partner in Sports World Crime, Brent Leary. Thanks, Brent. And thanks to everybody who showed up, and especially those who didn't. We'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Chow mein.
Bye.
And scene.
Okay. All right, and we're gonna stop our stream.